I'd leave the rest.
Yes, yes. Do you prefer the lights off?
I think so.
Because the projector lights, so I'll turn them off. That's fine. Maybe we won't turn off that big one. We'll leave the other lights. We'll leave it dimmer so that.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
All right, everyone. I guess we're gonna get started, although we do have others that are probably on their way. Okay, we have Mehdy and Nushi from Hyphen Studio today. Of course, this is a very important topic. Zoning, bylaws, very important. They do affect real estate. Many realtors get stuck in the questions where a client will ask, can I build? What are my possibilities? It affects the value when you're listing land or even when you're considering residential for any, let's say, rebuild or expansion of a residential property. So they'll fill you in with all those details. Of course, again, you'll find the recording on YouTube, our Academy channel. I invite everyone to sign up for that. And they will be providing you with their personal information. So moving forward, it is, I think, a good point of contact for all of you to have when it comes to any aspect of the real estate industry. Okay, so welcome again, and I'll leave the word to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Nushin. I'm here with my colleague Mehdi, and if you're curious, yes, we are husband and wife. And today we want to share some information with you about how zoning bylaws and acts can affect the properties, specifically those that you are purchasing for your client with the purpose of development. Before going through that, let me tell you a little bit about ourselves. Hyphen Studio is an architectural practice, and during past 4 years, we were focused on the residential projects from single-family dwellings to the subdivision developments and mid-rise, low-rise residential buildings. And during this time, we have designed more than 250 projects all over the GTA. And our experience is that during designing these projects, time to time, we had clients that were surprised with the condition of the lot that they already have bought, and they were somehow stuck in that situation. And but those situations could be predicted before purchase the property. So we thought, why not sharing this information with you as professionals that are involved one step ahead of us in a process of buying a property for the purpose of a development, not just living in a house. So today, we want to tell you how the bylaws and acts and all authorities can affect a potential development. Our focus in this presentation is the bylaws and the whole process in regards to single family dwellings. It's very similar for larger developments as well, but our focus in this presentation is single family dwellings. The first thing that should be considered is the zoning bylaws. And then the minor variances and the exceptions that can be approved by public hearings from committee, TLAB, LPAT, or similar public hearings. On top of that, the areas that are subject to design guidelines or site plan approvals, and of course, most importantly, conservation areas, and at the end, the heritage preservations. These are the items that we will review during these presentations. First of all, bylaws. As this map shows, each city and township has its own bylaw. For example, Toronto, York region, Mississauga, Durham, they have their own separate bylaws, and regulations of each of them is totally different from the others. If we zoom in to the Toronto area, we will see that not only a citywide bylaw known as 569/2013 governs the whole area, there are so many different bylaws known as old bylaws for each part of the Toronto. For example, Etobicoke, North York, Scarborough, these parts has their own old bylaw. And unfortunately, for now, we as designers should comply with both of them, the citywide new bylaw and the old bylaw. Another example, this is the Richmond Hill map. This is one of the smallest townships, and it has so many different bylaws. So when you just say that I have this property in Richmond Hill, it doesn't give that information. Each of these areas indicated with different colors has different regulations for the height, for the coverage, and all of these definitions. For reviewing the bylaws, there are some important parameters to be considered. The first and the most important one is the area. Usually bylaws govern the area by two definitions, and this is very important. So ask me questions if you don't know the difference. Some bylaws govern the area by coverage. Coverage is the footprint of the building on the main floor, and whatever is covered on any floor. But FSI is the gross floor area, the total livable area of the first and second floor. How it affects the design and the dream house of your client. If a property is located in a coverage-based area, usually the design is box shape because you cannot afford to lose any area in the design. If you have an exterior wall, you prefer to use that area already, which is already calculated in the coverage on the second floor. So if your client wants a open space, double height areas in the interior, usually coverage-based zoning doesn't work that way. On the other side, FSI-based zonings gives opportunities to have so much recess and projections, double height areas, because, for example, void, open to below areas is not calculated in the FSI. So you can have a bigger building envelope and put some void areas inside. Let me give you an example. This blue line here is on St. Ives. This map shows the Lawrence Park area, and this blue line is St. Ives Avenue. This avenue is the border of the Toronto and the North York zoning bylaws. On this side, Toronto is, pardon? On this side, Toronto is FSI based. On the other side, North York is coverage based. As a result, for this project we had on the same street, we had to fight to get 55% of FSI for the project, while on the other side of the street, just across the street, 35% of coverage was allowed. 35% of coverage means roughly 70% of FSI, because the coverage is the footprint. You can calculate it 2 times for the rough number of gross floor area. So on the other side,
Sorry to interrupt you. Would you please repeat this again?
Yeah.
The coverage, the 35.
Yeah.
How do you calculate the?
as I said, this is the Sandhills,
Yeah.
this is North York, this is Toronto, based on zoning bylaw, not maybe the neighborhood, it's not different. But here the zoning of the North York applies, and here the Toronto. This is the coverage base, this is FSI. On the North York side, the coverage is 35% allowed. On this side, FSI is 35% allowed. It means we had to go to Committee of Adjustment and fight to get 55% of FSI, while just across the street, 70% of FSI was already allowed. So this is a big difference. And this is what you should consider, because when you buy a property, for example, on Sandhills, odd number and even number has a huge difference for the client. This is just an example. Another
Sorry, odd number can have more square footage to build, or?
odd number on the North York side is coverage based. It potentially has more number, yes,
Okay.
but it's a percentage of the lot. If the lot is the same size, yes, that one has more coverage. Another important parameter is the height and number of a story. Zoning usually have 3 different definitions to govern the height. One is the wall height, measured from the grade to the soffit. The other one is total height, measured from grade to top of the roof. And there is, in some zoning bylaws, there is another one measured from grade to mid of the roof, which is between soffit and the top. Combination of these definitions with the number of a story makes a huge difference. This map shows the area below the Lawrence. The yellow portion, if you put it aside because it's commercial residential zone, which is totally different, the total allowed height for the rest is 10 meters. But the red portion, you can have 2 story. In the blue portion, you can have 3 story. What that means, with 10-meter height, we had 2 projects, adjacent properties in Brookdale. The right side is a regular 2-story on top of garage with 10-meter height. The other one has a unique opportunity to have a detached garage in the back, and the client wanted a 3-story house. Since these properties are located in the 3-story designation zone, it is possible, and we have designed a 3-story house here without integral garage within the same 10-meter height. So the combination of height and number of stories can create more potentials. Another thing, setbacks, specifically the side setbacks. When the properties are narrower, 25 footers, 30 footers, the side setbacks is very important. We had a client who wanted to buy a property on Joycey in Avenue Road, and he asked us to investigate about the property before he puts the purchase offer. And we figured out that the property has 6 foot required side setback on each side, 6 foot. Imagine, for example, for a 50-footer lot, 12 foot is already gone. And he was surprised. He said, I already have built another project on Haddington, just 1 street away, and without going to committee, I had 3 foot setback. How is that? It's this craziness of the bylaw. These different colors has different required side setbacks. It varies from 3 foot here, 6 foot there, 4 foot here. So all of these properties, when you buy them, are in the same neighborhood, Avenue Road, or any area, but they have different designations and different requirements. Sometimes it gives us opportunities. For example, this project is a 25-footer, but one of the biggest 25-footer lots that we have designed, because the designation is not RD, it's R. I don't want to go through all the details, but briefly, the potential it gives is that we could reduce the side setbacks to 1.5 foot on each side. So only 3 foot in total was gone for side setbacks, and as the result, this property had a bigger footprint. Although it had a right-of-way, it's a very big project.
Sorry, you mean the municipality put this designation as a some reasonable or not reasonable? You find the reason for that? You can guess this house maybe like this or like that.
Usually, if the bylaw was reasonable, it depends on the lot. For example, when the frontage of the lot is bigger, usually you should have more setback. For example, if you have a 100-foot wide lot in Sandringham, of course you should have 6 foot setback on each side. But
side or
side setbacks on each side. But when you have a 25-footer lot, you cannot have 6 foot on each side. Half of the lot is gone, so it's not reasonable. But unfortunately, especially
the fire code and some problem for fire, they need the side back.
No, it has nothing to do with fire. For fire, it's another story.
No, the building code and other things. It's not
Yeah.
about your benefit to build more. It's about the city. I don't think so. It is unreasonable.
I can address that. There are 2 different things. One is zoning bylaw, one is building code. Ontario Building Code OBC governs the whole province of Ontario, and it's the same everywhere. If you want to have a window, for example, to the side lot, you should have at least 4 foot setback to have a window. If you don't have that, you still can have window with fire shutter. That's another story. It's complying with the code regarding safety and security. It's another thing. We are talking about zoning bylaws that governs the building envelope, the height, the setbacks, coverage, area, all these things that is related to the city and the urban design and the envelope of the buildings. Unfortunately, the zoning bylaw, especially in the Toronto area, is designed somehow that almost 90% of the cases should go to committee of adjustment and ask for a variance. And this is the crazy part of the zoning in GTA, because what kind of zoning is this, that 90% of the cases should get an exemption from that? It's not. It already shows that it's not a wise and reasonable zoning. For example, for these 50-footer lots, 20-footer lots, there are so many areas that regardless of the setback, for example, the zoning requires 370 square meter of the lot area, and you should go and ask for a variance for the lot area which is already existing. It has nothing to do with your design. It's just the lot area or the lot frontage. That's how it works in our job. When we combine the side setback with the area, we can have more limitations or more opportunities. If we offset the property lines for front setback, rear setback, side setbacks, we get to an imaginary area in between that we call it the land table. When we compare the land table with the allowed coverage or FSI that we can get, it generates sometimes opportunity. For example, the land table of this project in Ledbury Park was bigger than the area that we could build. So we could have so many recesses, we could have a nice landscaped courtyard in the side. But in this project located on Mona Drive, since the lot was so big and the percentage of coverage or FSI was much bigger than the land table, we had to ask for length variance, which is a rarity, and it makes the case riskier and more time consuming. For these cases, we should go to committee of adjustment. What we do, we ask for exception from the zoning bylaw. Sometimes these exceptions are just golden numbers, usually related to the area regulations. For example, these golden numbers is the precedence of the neighborhood or as determined by the councillor. There is no flexibility with them. For example, in most areas that the allowed coverage is 30%, you can go only to 32%, 35%, and nothing more than that. Some other variances are the planning ones. These ones, usually for setback, height, length, is more flexible. We can justify it with the planner of the city, and we can discuss it why in this specific case, for example, on Mona Drive, why in this specific case that the lot depth is 250 foot, we are asking for more length because the lot is longer. And we have some technical variances as a result of construction methods or sometimes the different interpretation of old and new bylaws. Those are easily approvable in the committee.
I'm sorry, how long does it take for a committee adjustment to approve your plan?
Depends on the area, for example, and the workload that they have. For example, in North York, now if you apply today, your hearing would be 2.5, 3 months from now. In Toronto, the same day, if you apply for Toronto Committee of Adjustment, it won't be less than 4 to 5 months. It depends on the load of the work. Yes.
And then you have to add the waiting period, like the.
Yes, exactly.
What is it, 20 days or something, or?
After the committee, usually there is a 21-day, 20-day for appealing period. After that, the decision is final, and the permits can be submitted to the city.
So if you're lucky, 3.5 months.
2.5 months after the design is complete, after you have the zoning review.
6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I may, to me, it looks, especially with the city of Toronto, it looks like it's just a big money grabber because, like you're saying, they had opportunities when all these municipalities were amalgamated into one. They had opportunities to change all of this.
Yes.
But they like to leave it the way it was.
Exactly. I think it's a big stream of income for the city of Toronto.
Any little thing you want to do, you have to go to them. And the other thing is, at one time, as a homeowner, I could go there with a couple of sketches and get my desire, how do you say, granted. now it doesn't look like it's like, oh, first of all, we used to pay something like $200 per application, something very minimal. Now
it's
you're paying
3,500.
thousands, and you have to go with a professional, otherwise you're really not standing a chance.
Yeah.
So
Now it's 3,500 for committee application fee.
3,500.
And
From
yeah,
200.
I agree. The zoning is really crazy in Toronto. We had a project in Vancouver. We had this client that moved to Vancouver, and he was so happy with our job. So he wanted us to
Very
design
nice.
his home there. And this bylaw was so smart, and I couldn't believe it. After working with Toronto bylaw, I was surprised because, for example, in Toronto, the building length is 17 meters. No matter the depth of your lot is 100 foot, it's 500 foot, the length is 17 meters. In Vancouver, it was a certain number plus a percentage of the lot. So if you have a deeper lot, you
Makes
could
sense.
have deeper house, and you didn't need to bother with the committee. And yeah, I agree, it's a good income for the city, and
Yeah,
that's why they don't
remember,
change it.
I remember even in the old days, like I came from Italy. If you dared propose multiple residential building, they would almost arrest you. You know? And now they realize that where we have 6 houses and they're getting taxes from 6 houses, if they allow a building 40 foot high, they get who knows how much. And so now they're allowing everybody and their brother to build towers. And if you're, and since the province has something to do with it too, if you're asking to create residential lots for single houses anywhere in out of the GTA, in the GTA, the builders are not having an easy time getting their single residential proposals.
And they add to these fees every day. For example, for severance cases that you want to sever a lot into 2 or 3 or whatever properties, they had another charges, educational and municipal charges. A few years ago, it was like 20K. These days, you cannot believe it, it's 60 to 70K just for each new property. For severance, these are the things that should be considered if you are you want to buy a property with the purpose of severance. You should be aware of the charges. Anyway, what can happen after committee? Because
Can I ask you a quick
yeah,
question?
sure.
I remember it was a couple of months ago, right? There was 2 semi, but somehow it's 1 house, right? Then we want to say separate these 2 houses. So when I call the city, right, that city say, oh, it's a problem. First of all, your parking there now is all towards one side. So when you have these 2 separate, where is the other? Yeah. And then that I can understand. But why you also saying there's a setback problem? What's he means? He said there's a setback problem. I couldn't understand what he was talking.
Those, you know, when something is existing, it's existing. No one can touch it. But when you want to legalize something, you should go through the whole process. For example, there is an existing house in the neighborhood that requires 4 foot setback. It has 0 setback, sometimes on the property line. If it can be there as long as it wants, but as soon as you want to add some addition, renovation, do something inside the house, you should apply for permit. Then they say, oh, by the way, you have 0 setback, you should go to the committee and get approval. For example, in this example, it's one of those technical variances that I mentioned. It usually gets approved easily in committee because it's existing condition, but they send you to the committee even if the addition part is complying with the bylaw, the existing is not, and you want to legalize it now, so you should go and apply for that. this case that you mentioned, for example, that parking access should be established as a proper right of way, and all those legal stuff should be dealt with. Any other question?
Yeah, I guess it's the same as when you have in the city of Toronto, every once in a while in residential neighborhoods, you see that there's a store, right? And that is, I use that, like you're saying, if you don't touch it, it stays. It's called legal non-conforming. But if you touch it, then you have to comply with setbacks, with this, with that, with,
Yeah.
Again.
But I couldn't understand, it's two houses, no, I just want to become, become two houses. Now it's one, right, but I know it's,
because it's a committee application, you cannot, in order to sever a property, make it two
semi.
two different property lines with a different legal description. When you want to sever it, it's another application in committee called consent application. So the committee gives consent that this property becomes two different properties. That consent application reviews the whole building, not only the lot. The whole building should comply with bylaw. If not, it's a variance. For consent applications, the committee fee is not 3,500. It's like 12K something, because it's it's three different applications. Two minor variance application for each of the houses, and one consent to divide the whole property into two. The whole fee is something like 12K for consent application.
Plus professional fees.
And if you let me, I just go through this one slide, and the rest is for Mehdy's part, and we can give a break before that, if you're okay. What can happen after committee? This is important because you might be involved in cases that you are buying a property for your client that is already gone to committee and got approval. What happens? Can you change the design? Can you change it anyhow? Sometimes yes. It depends that if the committee has tied any of the drawings to the application. For example, sometimes we ask for wall height for a portion like a dormer. The committee ties that side elevation to the decision. So after the committee, you cannot raise the whole wall to that number, and you are obligated to just keep that one dormer. Sometimes they don't tie anything. For example, in this project, this is a very luxury house in Forestry. We designed this for a client, like a very traditional house, 3-story, over 7,000 square foot house. And we went to committee and got approval. After that, before permit submission, the client sold the property, and the new owner wanted a totally modern design, but didn't want to go back to committee. Since no drawings was tied to the application, we could change that to this, and this is under construction right now. These things can happen, but sometimes if wrong drawing is tied to the application, you are stuck in the situation. You should go back to the committee to untie it, or you should just stick to that and continue.
When you put the application for the drawing, how do you present it to not to be tied to a city for that application or map or drawing?
The default is that nothing is tied. You don't put any, for sure the designer or the client wants the most flexibility that he can get. But sometimes for those variances that I said, it's negotiable between the planner of the city. You justify something to the planner. You say, for example, hi, this height that I'm asking for is not for the whole portion. I'm just asking for this window. So he or she suggests to the committee panel to tie this side elevation. It's between the planner and the committee. It's applicant usually has no control on that. The planner suggests to the committee, if you want to approve this case, tie this drawing, because I don't want this guy to go and raise the wall height afterwards.
As long as they know the height and the square footage and everything is same, you can change the drawing.
The drawings, if that's is tied to the application. And it depends on the case. Sometimes they tie the site plan, sometimes they tie the elevations. It depends on the variances that you get. For example, I just give you this example. It's interesting. We had a client in Willowdale. There was a one-story extension in the back for the breakfast area, and it was one story, just a portion for the breakfast area. And planner suggested that site plan be tied to the application. Things got crazy in the committee hearing. There was a neighbor opposing to the application. We couldn't get the site setback variance, but they forgot to tie the site plan that planner suggested. After committee, we had to increase the site setback, but we could get the whole building to the back of that a small extension into a story. And the client was surprised how you did this. One variance was rejected, but the whole area of my house is bigger. It was crazy, but these are the things that depends on the committee hearing. If there is no question, we can have a break, and then yeah, after break, my colleague. Yes. So please help yourself, and we can continue with the rest.
I didn't know you guys use
Sorry. I'll come back again in like 10 minutes.
سلام چطوری؟ بفرمایید.
I saw you from back. I took my
یه دفعه خوشبرم کردم بیمارستان من جالب جز رو فرستادم 2 ساعت بعد مجبورشم آمبولانس زنگ بزنم.
Like your work. I guess this has information on you guys, phone numbers and stuff. Yes.
شما همه جا بس بروژه انجام میدید؟
بله ما
بفرمایید.
تشخیص
Hello?
توی خیلی مناطق پروژه داریم، از برلیتون داریم تا اسکاربرو داریم. میگم توی خود جی تی ای پروژه داریم. تریتوری بیشتر سمت فارسی Avenue or توی این قسمت من ساخت دیزاین و پرمیت و در
Because it's a little bit smaller, I will
برای
go back
بعضی
and
کیسا
look at
باید
it.
پلنر آمدن داشته باشیم ما مثلا با چند پلنر کار می‌کنیم ولی بخش دیزاینش رو کیسایی که مثلا بعضی کیس ورسی لب حتما باید پلنر داشته باشه که آرکیتکت نمیتونیم نقشه رو شما ثابت می‌کنید ولی بسته به این چه وریانت داریم می‌گیریم ممکنه پلنر به کامیتی بگه اگر اینو اپروو کردی این دراینگش رو بهش فایل مثلا ممکنه که پلنر بگه که مثلا ما همه درنگا رو باید ثابت کنیم ولی ما خب تنظیم نشده دست ما باز باشه مثل این پروژه‌ای که کلا میتونیم انجام بدیم ولی بسته به اینکه چه وریانسی می‌گیریم و پلنر مثلا چقدر قابل باشه یه چیزی رو ساجست ممکنه بکنه بکنیم
تمام چیزایی که حرکتی تو وبسایت هست.
بله
ایسیور کم دارین چیزی؟
بله سمت ایسیور داریم سایت
哦，呀，没关系，我过来。这个人太吉祥。
شما این نشون
ما شرکت جوونی هستیم که خب مثلا خیلی اسم شاید نداشته باشیم ولی کارهای خیلی خوبی داریم
نه نداری من داستانی که
碟子都没有
啊，没有了。
碟子没有。
哦。
How are you?
Are you busy?
So you do like application and also the architecture design.
We do architectural design. We do interior design for our own projects, not other projects, just the ones that we have done the architectural part. We get permit, we issue the construction drawings, we review the project during the construction from A to Z.
Oh, okay. So only just somebody to build, but before that.
Yeah, but the intention for this presentation is to involve the people that are involved before us. Because sometimes the client buys a property and gets surprised for the
Yeah,
design.
they want to build a 4,000 and they only can build 3,000. So it's better if they want to do consulting first.
Yeah, I have an example. We do this for all the clients. When they want to just put a purchase offer, we review the case, what is possible in his. If the next part that Mehdy covers is very important because sometimes it's very dangerous. Some properties you cannot even develop them, and the whole thing is.
But if I put an offer like an option, how many cases?
Sometimes we can just make sure that everything is correct in the numbers. It doesn't take that much. But sometimes the property is subject to conservation authorities.
But actually, from initially, I can put just 5 days for you guys to review.
Yes.
Then if the problem, we ask for extension.
The problem is that these days, usually conditional offer doesn't work.
But right now changed, so.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I'm just curious, right? I used to work, I used like 30 years ago working in the leather and rubber. Are they still exist? Do you know?
I'm not sure.
And your wife?
$5. Very good.
For
what?
For the slides, what do you mean for what?
You know what? I'm gonna pay you to eat.
我以前做的那个公司是很大的那个 architect firm，他以前是在那个3年
Whenever you are okay, we can continue.
It's a hard sell. I had an offer. But every time they put up the studio, they want. But thank you so much. I did enjoy my holiday. I needed it. It's hard. But I appreciate you both.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, okay. Bye.
No, the one I got.
Yes, yes.
No, I didn't speak.
Yeah, within an observation.
Like, on everything.
Okay, no problem. Probably was.
Then another one.
Thank you very much.
And I was already paying.
How are you?
I had something to say. Not me as another region.
So, if we want to go through other authorities and act have have effects on the potential of our property. The next item are design guideline and SPA. SPA stands for site plan approval, and I will go through that. In addition to zoning bylaw, applicable zoning bylaw, time to time and in a specific neighborhood, maybe they have natural feature characteristic or heritage value. We do have some design guidelines. These red dot line is design guidelines for the Toronto, and we also have it for Richmond Hill, for Mississauga. All other township, they have their own design guidelines. Sometimes these design guidelines is the way just advisory. You don't have to comply with that. Sometimes you have to comply with them, and sometimes in rare cases, even those guidelines overrule the zoning bylaw. So they are important, and you have to know about that. Usually these design guidelines in Toronto specifically, they are talking about bigger development. For example, this one, Bayview design guidelines is specifically for single family dwelling combining with townhouses. It's a great asset for us for proposing any development there in Bayview. Sometimes, the others, for example, for Forest Hill is just advisory. For the lease side, it's just advantage to be compliant with that. But we have one of the most crazy one here in Richmond Hill. We have a village core design guideline. It's the area, the jurisdiction of this design guideline is east side of Mill Pond area, Major McAnyon. And we have design guidelines that overrule the zoning bylaw in that neighborhood. It means that, forget about the zoning bylaw, we have to comply with that design guideline. For this case, we had this proposal. This property was our own. It's supposed to be our dream house. Okay, it was our main proposal for this project, and based on compliance with zoning bylaw, it was very reasonable application. We could get it. We could get all minor variances in committee easily. But the design guideline came through. We had to do negotiation with town staff. We applied some changes, and as you can see, we came up with totally, with 4 totally different designs to finally get approval for this one. And what's the effects on your potential purchase or your client? This process took about more than a year. And Even for us, we changed our plan. Now we are selling this property with the permit and forget about living in Richmond, having another plan somewhere else. It can happen for all your clients as well. In addition, that design guideline, we also have some area you have to apply for SPA, site plan approval. Site plan approval is a common practice for bigger projects like subdivisions, townhouses, mid-rise buildings. But in some specific area, you have to apply for SPA even for a single family building. Like this, in this town of Richmond Hill, all the green area here, and here, you have to apply for site plan approval. And what's the catch for that, the site plan approval? It means that you have to involve more consultants, more study, more cost, and more time. And if we say roughly you need 5 to 6 months to get a permit for regular project, for site plan approval, you have to have minimum a year or a little bit more than that. Another changes, you have to hire an architect, specifically an architect. You cannot have any BCA designer or owner for that. Site plan approval should go through an architect. And in Richmond Hill, we have it. In part of Markham, we have it. In Mississauga, in Lone Park area, we have that site plan approval process. In Burlington, we used to have it for all urban area. Last year, they changed it, just put some holding area, some same as Oakville. Anyway, we have those areas, site plan approval is applicable. And before buying any property, you have to be aware of that. And for this case, since we are in Richmond Hill, here is the Mill Pond area, here is the Sunset Beach area, we have that site plan approval process. We have to apply for them. Till now, it was all predicted parameters. So now I want to talk about the scary part. All of them, all other parameters were manageable. They could change the proposal, they could reduce or increase the height, the site setback, the area, something like that. But conservation authority could totally ruin the project. And it is scary because it happens, time to time it happens. And why it's important? Because those authorities, we know them as a specific name, for example, TRCA, LSRCA, or CBCA. Each of them each names come from a watershed of a specific area. Those authorities, you cannot appeal their decision. Officially, you can appeal their decision to Land and Mining Commissioner. But from 1970s, the time of establishment of these authorities, never ever any decision happened against those conservation authority. It was just one decision. They pursued in the north part of Ontario. They pursued that to Supreme Court of Canada, and we are waiting for that decision. But for sure, for this kind of stuff, we cannot go there. We cannot waste time and money to go there. But it means that if they say no, it's a big no. So we have to comply with that. And these conservation authority, usually they have same rule. Here we have TRCA, Toronto, Richmond Hill, mostly TRCA. Here we have LSRCA, Watershed of Lake Simcoe. Here we have CBCA, Halton, and all of them are the same. We may just have some exception here and there. I will go through those changes, those differences.
Excuse me, how long do they take
for that
to get their approvals?
Depends on their concern. Usually they have different kind of concern, and based on that, they give us their permit. But in this jurisdiction, they have a map, usually defining any regulated area. If your property located in this area doesn't mean anything. But if your property located in regulated area, it means that you have to get a permit from them. Even for a even interior alteration or major innovation, you have to get a permit from them. It's totally separate permits.
Actually, I had 2 deals. One deal, both lot, it was 50 by 120. And one of them, 2 feet by 2 feet at the corner of one of the lots. It was controlled by conservation authority. another house, 100% of the lot, it was controlled. Just I want to know what is the difference between it's a small, very, very small portion?
No difference. Depends on their concern. I will go through that.
Okay, for the interior, can my client, for example, remove a wall inside the house if 100%?
Yes, inside the house, usually you can do that.
But like not even inside
you have to get a permit from them.
Permit
from the TRCA.
How about if the actual house, it is not in the conservation area, the lot is small?
Doesn't matter. The house doesn't matter. The property is important. If the property located in regulated area, doesn't matter. The house is located or...
It is not located, actually I explained to you. It is 150 by 120. Only 2 feet by 2 feet of the backyard.
Yeah, it means that property is regulated one.
Oh, it means
yeah, exactly. You know, determination of that regulated area is very important. Same as your case, we have a case, you know, last year, it was 1.5 years in Forest Heights Boulevard, Bayview and 401. We had a client, you know, ask us, actually it was a friend, ask us, I want to buy this property, and that time it was 2 point something, you know, the value he wanted to put offer there. He asked us, can you take a look at that and see what's going on? What can I do? What can I build there? We checked everything. It was a very flat, you know, property. Nobody could ever think that it's part of that regulated area. But usually, I always check the, you know, TRC regulated area or any other conservation. All of you can do that. All conservation area, they have map on their website. I checked that. And I found that you know, it's a regulated area, and the regulation, the concern was so serious. Since that time market was so crazy, they had just 1 day to put offer. I had to call the planner I know in TRC and ask them what's the concern there, and they told me we don't wanna see any changes in that building. Even you cannot touch the footprint of the building. Fortunately, our friends didn't buy the property, but maybe 2 or 3 months ago, I heard from another client. I have a property in Forest Heights. I want you to design it. I said, is this property? Forget about that. You cannot do that. And the determination of being in a regulated area is important. Doesn't matter for them how much of your property is in regulated area. If even, you know, a feet is there, it's regulated.
In this example, my client bought that house 2 feet by 2 feet. He went to the municipality, the location is Iskilingiri, and the municipality said you don't need to go to conservation authority because it is the end of the lot. Just you have to come to us to give you permit to make addition at the front of the house without asking the conservation area. Even when I called them, I sent an email to conservation authority. I asked them, and they said, just if they want to make a swimming pool, just please let us know. Swimming. But in another example, I told you it was 100%. It is Olive Avenue at Iskilingiri. 100% it is authority. Even you cannot, even exactly the answer was that, even you cannot put a nail in the backyard.
Yeah, you know,
as
sometimes
long as I do understand, it is depend on the how much where is the location of the.
Okay. I will go through that. I have an example. You know, you have to get a clearance from them. It's, you know, we call it permit from TRC. Sometimes that permit is just sending drawing for them. They will approve it. For example, in your case, a small portion of the property is there. But anyway, you have to get the clearance from them. They don't care about that, but sometimes they care about that so much. You know, I have an example like yours. I will go through that. Another example to be, you know, to put emphasis on being scary here. We had another project in York Ridge area, northeast of Young and York Mills. It was the only vacant lot in the neighborhood. All other adjacent property already developed before establishment of the RCA. And my client wanted to have a spectacular design there because it was one of the rare opportunity you can have view of CN Tower from your backyard, from York Mills. It's located on very steep slope there. We design everything in terms of compliance with zoning bylaw. We comply with everything. Just couple minor variances, which was okay. City supports our application, but TRCA said, you cannot touch this property because it was vacant before, it's severed before establishment of TRCA, and this amazing property sitting there worthless. They cannot touch that, even they cannot provide any access to that property. And we fight for this property for 2 years, and finally we give up. We found that we cannot do anything for that property. And the reason for that, usually for TRCA, we have 3 major concepts. The main purpose of conservation authority is protecting natural features and also managing natural hazards. In terms of these 2 items, they have, in terms of development, they have 3 major concepts. The most common one is natural slope protection. If there is a natural slope in your property, you have to be aware of that. TRCA defined 2 important lines for us, top of a slope and toe of a slope. And it says you have to have 10 meter setback from these 2 lines, then you can propose any development. Sometimes we can reduce this 10 meter to 6 meter by asking for minor variances. But for this area, forget about that. This is the valley wall, and they want to protect this area. Same thing happened for our Yorkridge project. That's why they didn't allow us to touch this land. That valley wall is out of our control. Forget about that. In that case, the whole property located on valley wall, but it's what it is. It's the situation there. So for determining these 2 lines, sometimes those 2 lines are visual. We can determine it visually. Same as your case, you asked us, we had another project in RJ, Teddington Park. Lot was so deep, and only the back of this property was regulated in TRCA. What did we do? You have to get a permit from them. We asked them, this is our proposal. We are so far from this top of a slope. In these cases, usually they come to the, maybe the process with LSRCA a little bit different, but it should be the same. TRCA, staff came to the property, we determined this line visually, and we showed them even with 10 meter setback, we have enough setback there. Then we got the clearance without any study, anything, we just get the clearance. It cost us about $700 for that application. That's all in these cases. They didn't care about that. In some cases, for example, like this, it's in Broadleaf, Downsview and Lawrence Park. That top of a slope was so close to the building. So for determining this line, we have to provide geotechnical study, and geotechnical engineer provide geotechnical study, and then we had to show exact accurate setback from that line to be sure that we are complying with TRC. So in this case, we had to spend more money and more time on that project. Actually, the client had to spend more money and time for that. Another concern usually we have is regional floodplain zone. Sometimes, same as Forest Heights example I told you, sometimes the property is flat, but TRC on their map, they are showing regional floodplain. They are thinking about flood hazard. In these cases, for example, this project was in Markham. In this case, usually in this case, TRCA give us a geodetical data, an elevation for the property, and it says your building should be higher than that elevation, and also should be out of this line. This line is the line of that specific elevation, this red line. In these cases, it says you have to be out of this line. In this case, we don't have to have that setback. We can stick to this line. But in this situation, we proposed this one, and we could get the permit for that because of an exception in TRCA policy. They said if you have existing building, you can keep that existing building, but you cannot propose anything more than that. In this case, our basement was like this, and the original footprint was like this, and we proposed this footprint. The new building doesn't have bigger basement and also no walkout because it should be flood-proof. But if this property, for example, located in Oakville, we couldn't propose anything. We used that exception in TRCA policy, which is not in CVCA, I guess. Another thing, another concern for TRCA is vegetation protection. You may heard about the rule of, the general rule of removing any private owned tree, less than 30 centimeters, you don't have any permit, you can remove it. But it's not the case in regulated area. Even a bush can be protected there. Believe me, it's not exaggerating. I was with, I attended in several site meetings with TRCA staff in several projects, and they just going through the search and oh, look at that bush, it's important, you have to protect it. Come on, it's just a bush, but they want it usually. But for this case, we had this project. It's 150 Sandringham. The property was, look, it was piece of the woods actually. It's so deep. We had top of a slope problem, and this area was full of tree. But in terms of proposing new building there, we had a problem with several protected trees. This orange area was protected tree that TRC wanted us to keep them. In this case, we came up with creative solution. We kept the existing foundation wall and put our foundation wall, new foundation wall inside of that, then cantilever the whole house on top of that to be able to protect those trees for TRCA. And they accepted, but it took so long for us to do several meetings with them to justify them to accept this solution for us.
Sorry, won't the tree roots eventually affect a new building?
No, because there was a building there.
Okay, yeah.
So, but our building was a little bit bigger than the existing one. But we put our existing foundation wall inside of the existing house because the root already developed there. We put our foundation wall there and cantilever the whole building above grade on top of that.
What about the vegetation on the top one? What if they wanted to build a pool?
Where?
You have to apply all that lot you said with all trees.
Actually, this area was valley wall. No, this is top of a slope we had. Right. This is 10 meters, and from this area it's a valley wall. We couldn't even landscaping there, propose any landscaping there. That valley wall is applied here as well.
What is the setback on the red area you see it in the map? Yes. Is there any setback between that area and the foundation?
For protection, usually we protect regular protection for trees is we find it from the chart. In TRCA zone, we have to double that number, and usually TRCA asks us minimum 2 feet setback from that because they said during the construction, if you excavate that area, you're gonna damage the root. If you wanna if you want to eliminate that setback, you have to add some note or some consideration during the excavation. You have to hire an arborist to be there to excavate it by hand, except excavating by machine. You can eliminate that setback, but usually they are looking for 2 feet setback. Yeah. Before going that heritage preservation, we also have another concern in TRCA regulated area, which it's not common, but if you may heard about that, it's active hazard area, active erosion area. All those rules are gonna be different in those active hazard area. And where are those active hazard area? Usually adjacent of subway station or GO train station, since they change the natural level of water, the flow of any natural river or anything gonna be different, and then we will have active hazard area there. All those rules are not applicable for active hazard area. You have to consult with TRCA before doing anything there. You have to make sure that it's not active hazard area before anything.
But it is in the map. Before we go, it goes in the map, TCRA map.
On the map that all of us has access, just said it's regulated area. But if you go to the conservation area, yeah, they let you know that is it active hazard or not, or the concern is floodplain or slope protection. What is their concern? Usually it takes couple weeks for that. There is an application, concept development plan for that. There is an application by that application, you can get their official feedback. But sometimes you can get it verbally. We usually call the planner and ask them, because of other projects that we do, we can call them and ask them. But the official application is concept development plan. You can ask for that. Yep.
Do you go to these, if you have conservation on the property, can you go to them first, or do you have to go through the whole building?
No,
I
actually,
understand you have to do the plan, but do you have to get all the permits and then can turn you down, or can you?
In terms of process, doesn't matter. At the before the building permit issuance, you have to have the conservation permit.
Right.
But yeah, you can go ahead and ask them, but they won't give you any official answer without any site plan. Because you have to have a site plan. The other documents doesn't matter, but you have to submit a site plan for them. To, then they can evaluate the situation. And the last part is heritage preservation. It's not common, but it's scary again because it can ruin the project. Not same as conservation area. For heritage preservation, we have two concepts for that. One is heritage district. The other one is heritage building. Heritage district is totally different than heritage building. You can call it one building is located in heritage district. It means that there are some additional considerations, same as design guideline, you have to follow them. But if your building is designated, not the district, if the building is designated, then you have to ask what type of designation. Usually we have 4 or 5 type of designation. 2 of them are applicable to the building. Some of them applied for the lot, some of them applied for the natural feature, but 2 of them are so common for the building. Designation under Part 5 and designation under Part 4. Under Part 5, what does it mean? Under Part 5, it means this is part of the heritage area, so you have to keep the look of the building. You cannot touch the outside of the building from a street. They don't care about the back of property. From the street, you should keep it as it is. Under Part 4, heritage building designated under Part 4, it means it's cultural asset. You cannot even change anything interior before hiring heritage consultant. And you have to get a permit for a separate permit for that. If your building designated under Part 4. And there is another situation. Your property is not designated yet, but nominated. And this situation is worse than all of them. We had a case in St. Edmund in Lawrence Park. We have lots of designated building, lots of designated property in Lawrence Park. And the property wasn't in the heritage register. The seller agent let us know that this property was nominated. And the way that we could get that nomination information, we had to go to the city and ask the heritage department. And that nomination can take from 6 months to 6 years. Nobody knows what happened. So you cannot do anything. You cannot get any permit during that time. And you may lucky they don't designate it, or they designate it at the end. So that nomination stage, you have to be cautious about that. Yes.
Actually, I have 2 questions. First of all, you told us about the Mill Pond area you had in the project. Yeah. What one that one was Part 5 or Part 4?
It's not designated. Even it's not heritage. They said it's heritage district, but it's not designated heritage district. We have lots of heritage building there, but that property wasn't heritage, and even that district is not officially designated.
What
heritage.
district was that?
Mill Street.
Mill Street.
Yeah.
But I know in the Mill Pond area, the area itself, it is designated, and we cannot build a modern house.
No, we did. We got that's the thing. We have, it's a combination of bad situation there. We have design guideline, we have SPA, not heritage district, not heritage building, but so many heritage building around. For example, in that case, our adjacent neighbor was designated building, and we had to comply with that. We had to be seamless with that building, but that building, we had to comply with village core guideline first, and yeah, Our first proposal was modern. We had to fight with them several meetings. Finally, we could get approved based on compliance with that design
What
guideline.
about the square footage?
Conservation, yeah. The square footage is same as well. Same as usual.
It was usual.
Yeah, it was usual.
The city of Richmond.
Yes, yeah,
And
that's sorry. That point is valid. It is conservation area, not heritage area.
Oh, it was conservation. How about the basement? That building had basement too?
Yes, same as
It
usual.
wasn't, what is that, flood protection?
No, it wasn't there. It wasn't TRCA regulated area. They call it, it's something in between, not officially designated.
And it wasn't heritage.
It wasn't heritage. The district was not heritage. It's not
Have
heritage.
you had any project on the heritage
Yes.
designated?
Yeah, it's the next thing. We had a project in Rosedale. It was designated under Part 5, and also it was located in designated district. For designated, it's automatically when the building is designated, the district designation doesn't matter because we have to keep it as it is. In this project, in 23 Douglas, I think it's not visible, but it was located. It was designated under Part 5 here, and also the property is designated, the district is designated. It was the situation that we had, what we could propose, and what it's almost done. We should keep the outside as it was. Even for changing the window, we had to keep the style same. As you can see here, I believe that is not visible. Even the door, the window, everything had same style, material, same thing. We didn't touch the material, just changing the window. But interior, we changed everything.
It was Part 5.
It was Part 5. And also we proposed an addition here from the back. Since it wasn't visible, nobody could see it from the street, they accepted it. Exactly.
So what was the Part 4?
For the Part 4, for example,
it is Part 4.
If it was the Part 4, we couldn't change the whole floor plan because that for Part 4, for example, that St. Edmund project with property, it's supposed to be designated under Part 4. It was nomination, but it's supposed to be because they said a famous architect used to live there. So they want to keep the layout as it was. If you want to apply any changes, you have to hire a heritage consultant. They have to propose, they have to gather information and all information for a proposal, submit it for the Heritage Department of the City of Toronto. They put, they review it. If they have any comment, they put it, and you have to satisfy them. But general intention of this process is keep the layout as it was.
But can you add another story, another floor?
It depends. Even under Part 5, you cannot. We propose that addition at the back of the house, not in the front of the house. You cannot change the look of the neighborhood.
It is both of the Part 5 and Part 4. Even
Yes,
the
exactly.
plans you cannot. Okay.
So does that mean potentially in the back you could raise?
Exactly.
So you could raise the back, just not the front?
Exactly. Under Part 5, you can do that, not Part 4.
Right.
So if clients want to buy heritage home, and say they don't want to change it and just buy, should we encourage it or not in the event they do want to modify?
Depends on their intention. If their intention and the situation, the condition of the building, if they want to buy it and leave it in there, it's okay. You have to see, you have to do just some, inspection. If it's good, they can live there.
But which part of the heritage affects the inside of the building?
Part 4.
Part 4, which is
Part 4, it means cultural asset. They have to keep the the items.
And that's the history part.
Yes, yeah.
I have the age. What is actually, if the age of the building, it is more than 100 years.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter, or less.
Doesn't matter. It still doesn't matter. There is no rule for that.
It could be a shack and be 400 years old. It's still a shack.
Exactly. For example, in Blightwood area, I guess they approve it. Recently, they approved it. Blightwood in south of Lawrence Park, they put the whole neighborhood as a designated area, designated district, heritage district. Although we have lots of modern house there, but they put it.
In the Midtown, I was in a deal. I went to the city. city said the Mill Pond area in Richmond Hill, it is the only community with the coverage of the new house doesn't have depth on it in the formula.
No, actually, no, it's the situation here is about that zoning bylaw Nushi mentioned at the first part. The applicable zoning bylaw here, there is 6671. And they said about the lot coverage, they calculated based on frontage of the house.
Yes, in that area, do you remember I showed you the map of Richmond Hill that there are so many different bylaws in different areas? In that Mill Pond area, the way that they calculate the allowed area that you can build is doesn't matter, is not dependent to the lot depth. It's just based on the lot frontage. For example, if you have a 50-foot frontage, no matter the depth is 100 or 500, you can build only almost 2,500 square foot for GFA. It's not even lot coverage.
And the
for
GFA
total of first floor and second floor should be 2,500 square foot.
But you had a project in Mill.
Yes.
We have to go to the committee.
We
for
should
that.
go to committee and get a minor variance because all other projects had got the same variance. The design that we have proposed and the urban design department has approved is almost 4,100 square foot.
And this
4,000
area,
square
4,000,
Yes.
and this area is one of the
For the
rare
first
they
and
include
second.
the garage there.
For the first and second, excluding the basement. But again, as I said, that the way that they calculate the coverage or FSI for different areas is different. For example, in this one, they calculate garage in the living space, but it's not living
But
space.
many houses you see in the Mill Pond area, it is not modern. They couldn't.
The one that the final result, if
No,
you
I
go
saw that.
back,
It was modern.
the
It's kind of
final,
modern.
they call it contemporary. Yeah, and we had a 1-year fight with the city to get this approved because we usually don't give up on our projects, especially when it's on our house. We fight with the city.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
let me finish the whole one and then
Yeah.
we'll start question and answer, sorry. Because it was the last one, we covered the heritage designation. The last point is, as we mentioned, we usually encourage everyone to do this investigation, to do this preliminary feasibility study. We ask all of the clients, if you want to buy any property, just give us a call and let us know about that, because that investigation, and it's a simple service. That investigation can save lots of money and can avoid lots of headache later on. So you have our contact info, and the reason that we are here is sharing this information with you. And since we are expanding our network, we feel free to ask us to do any consultation for any potential property that you are looking for. That
How much does it cost for us for investigation?
It's a preliminary one. It's if I have to do the investigation, for example, if I have to go to the TRC and ask some specific thing, it depends on the time that we spend. But for the zoning bylaw, actually, we never charge anyone about that.
We don't charge the clients for this service because usually we are so good, and if they see our work, after they buy the property, they come to us for our design. So we can include that a small service fee in our design fee. And if it takes so much time to figure it out, we charge based on hourly basis, and it's not that much.
To add to it,
Okay, when we calculate the square footage in the building, in the Richmond Hill, we calculate, we add the garage space with the inside the house.
Yes.
How about one area? Like, are they the same or is
No,
different?
not necessarily. Even in a Richmond Hill, in a garden area, in 16 and young, it's different because it's another zoning bylaw. It's 2533. At major matter young, it's 6671. it's totally different. One has totally different story. If you can just send us the address, we can check.
Sometimes I need to add something to this answer. Sometimes it's not only about calculating the garage in the GFA or not. Sometimes it's about the regulation that determines the allowed area. For example, in our case, if the GFA was the regular thing that happens everywhere, for example, 60% of the lot, we were okay even calculating the garage. But here, the way that they calculate allowed FSI based on just lot frontage, regardless of the lot depth, that portion is making problem, not calculating the garage. And in most zoning designations, the garage is not included.
Okay, let's say like in one Bathurst and Major Mackenzie, is garage like included there?
I have to double check it, but it shouldn't. It shouldn't.
To add to what you were saying, as realtors, when we see that there is something where there's a question mark, I suggest that we put in a due diligence condition.
That's the best.
And we'll go see you because I go to the municipalities, conservation authorities, and so on to ask for questions. But believe me, sometimes what you think you hear is not what they're saying. So have a professional look at things because even let's say when it comes to property, when we say, oh, this property is nice, and we look up, no, we should look down. If you look at the definition of property, it's the land. The house or tower or whatever is an improvement on the property. So you're buying the property, which is the land, with improvements.
How long is
So,
your due diligence?
pardon me?
How long is your due diligence usually?
Wow, that's, I guess, for
The
something
problem
like
is
this,
that
probably
these
short.
days, usually the conditional offers is not
Yeah.
accepted. Usually clients want to go with with firm offers, but most of the time, this investigation about the zoning doesn't take much. We can do it from our office, we can do it in couple hours, and it doesn't take that much. But for
TRCA, it specifically depends on the neighborhood. We have to check it out, see what's their concept, because nobody has access to their map. We have to go there in person and check it. And it depends on, for example, if you ask me about the property in Lawrence Park, I do check the heritage register. I have to go there and check it because I want to be sure.
Not to have surprise.
Exactly.
And if it is designated, then it brings a red flag, so you should be more careful. If it's not, then we can tell you that it's not in regulated area for heritage or conservation. You can go ahead. You don't need due diligence.
Yep.
I had a client looking for a place in Bolingbrook in Scarborough over there, and there are some heritage, houses registered. I checked it online. There were some. It was easy. It was showing me which houses were registered as. But do you think is it enough to?
Yes. Yeah. For specifically for GTA area is enough because they recently add even the study area. They recently add that nomination. I will show you the sample. If it's located in GTA, you are okay with that.
I think it was also showing nominated.
Yeah. Yes. These are, if you go to the website, they have heritage registry. If you Google it, it's gonna come. It shows all heritage property, all heritage building, and also design, design area. I don't know what they call it. They call it under study area, and that's enough for you.
Does it mean nominated under study?
Yes, that under study is like this, and you can type your address, and based on that address, specifically you can find if there is any designation or not. Another point is for the committee of adjustment. In any cases, if you buy a property and it was a committee application there, one thing that we always check is the history of the property. If there is any committee of application before purchasing that property, it's a flag for us. I have to check it. Did they get any approval or not? Did get any refusal? If it refused, what was the reason for that? And that's another thing you have to consider.
You mentioned that sometimes the heritage application can take up to 6 years. Why so long?
Depends.
They
They
take
have,
their time to study. They have no rush, and that's the scary part because they have no rush. They just doing their
There's
study
no way of
and
requesting to.
yeah.
you have to
and
fight it. Actually,
it's the client's property
You can
that
appeal a lot
is
to
sitting there.
court.
They're paid on a salary basis.
Whatever they can make money out of. That's Canada's government.
I think it's pretty
Is it-
lucky to
Is there
get
a standard
Canada is
rule
one of
about
the best
trees?
places
If
in
you
the world
remove
to
one, you have to
live.
plant one?
Depends.
Yeah, I know.
Depends on if
It's in the
the tree
Caribbean
is
and so on
private
and
home or
so
city
we're
home.
still-
For
I
private
know
home,
exactly
or
how.
for any out of regulated area, for anything more than 30 centimeter, you have to get a permit, and you have to have a reason for removing that tree.
And
Even
I
private
think-
business?
Yes.
and
How do you
for-
know that it's private or city?
They know it.
It's
Even-
inside the property or outside the property.
Oh.
That's a
It's in the
difference.
backyard. So you
So
must
it's,
chop it down?
it's
It's more than
private.
30 centimeter?
Yeah.
It's less
Yeah.
than 30
30
centimeters.
If it's more than 30 centimeter, you have to get a permit
It's
for that.
more, you should have a reason for construction, or if it's dangerous, it's falling down, something like that,
Yeah.
then they give you a permit. Yeah, and yes, you should have a replacement tree for that.
Do you know the cost of one big concrete
Depends on the
tree?
city. Depends on the city and type.
For the private owned, the application cost, I think is 300 something for each tree. The replanting cost is 500 something.
But if
And you should have an arborist report, it's another
A what
five.
report?
Arborist report.
Arborist, and then you stop the person to do
Yeah.
the labor.
If you add all of these, you.
How much?
depends, actually, these numbers are for
2000.
Toronto, something like
Yeah,
that.
2,000.
2,000, yeah.
1,500,
No, I'm in the middle of a
2,000.
deal trying to request
Just
to remove that tree.
a rough idea, it's the whole thing from arborist report. to
But the
average.
application process will take 6 months?
No,
No,
it's
it's
easy
much
one.
faster.
All right.
The size of tree doesn't matter of the price or?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
The size of
It
it
has
doesn't
to be
matter.
graded in centimeters.
For,
the
for
diameter.
city owned, yes, it does. For private, no. For private, if it's more than 30 centimeter, it's just one tree, you should have replacements, and you should pay application fee, that's all. For the city owned, on top of this, you should pay the actual value of the tree, and it depends on the
Arborist.
size of the
Dollar
tree.
$1,000 for a tree or?
Sometimes it does.
Depends, actually depends. For example, for the Joyce project, we had 30 centimeter tree, we paid how much?
We paid almost 4,000 for guarantee after the construction. If the replacement tree is healthy, they will release the deposit. If not, they will take
But it
it.
was about 4 to 5,000 for 25 centimeter. tree.
Okay, centimeter, the.
The trunk,
diameter,
diameter,
the
yeah,
thickness,
yeah.
The
not the
di-
height.
No, height doesn't matter.
Height doesn't matter, the diameter of the trunk.
And for those one, before consulting with us, the best reference is arborist. Maybe the arborist said, it's not a fair condition, you can easily remove it.
Yeah.
They are the better reference for removing it.
They come and stamp the trees.
Yep.
What you can do with it.
Well, like the urban lot, like this back on Rouge,
Put some.
Rouge area, those kind of, mostly, let's say, it will affect by the conservation.
Yes.
But they put
Yeah.
everything.
Usually if the lot is back to ravine, side to ravine, there is a visual, a steep slope there. You should, for sure, you should check the conservation areas. It's a sign. But again, it's not only sign. For example, for that Forest Heights project,
The property was flat, you
Was
couldn't
flat.
see that, but
you couldn't imagine or guess.
Good to know.
Okay.
okay. If there is no other question,
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
My name is Lucy. These are the office owners.
Yeah, of the tree.
Actually, I need information for me.
Sure.
I know, I'm just in the line store. Good. Smile first. All the. Right, so I do that.
We can do that.
That's what I was gonna say, but you use that.
What do we put,
Because they're just that.
around 5 years or 6 years? I thought maybe what does it mean?
Yes, we can do that.
And that only means something for the client, because it means not only idle, but if it's important, it means more liability and more professional. Everyone can do us. Actually, different departments, you know, the first stage of training, designing concept, and the last part, you know, making concept.
So I get your name. Mehdy is actually
So what I want to develop my first want to do the high end area.
I have the business card or
Yeah, I forgot my business card, but you know, she has it, and you also have our number there. Office and, you know, my cell phone and
I can do a business card.
all of them, no, not complete design, because there is a price.
I need for building and complete lease.
Yeah.
Presentation area.
But I should tell you which one was.
No, it doesn't say it.
Yeah, but I can show you. We have, even last 4 years, we have 7 cases in TRC in conservation areas, and now we know almost everyone in TRC. We have set problem with LSRC as well, and also but you know, now we know everyone in TRC, we can, we are connecting. But yes, I can take this one. You guys doing a structural design? We have a structural design. But sometimes some clients want to have their own structural design, we are okay with that, but usually.
Can I have your cell phone number as well?
We had to download 5 hours.
How do you know that? You should be customer. Very nice guy, professional. Always smile.
For a regular lot, it doesn't have to go through a whole bunch of
I'll keep it track.
How do you base your fees? I don't want to know how much they are, but what do you base it on?
I have to provide something because, you know, we take care of the whole house for each project. We call it just a tag, not a matter. Each project, and usually something of some of our colleagues will charge per square meter.
Yeah, actually, really, if it's 3,000 or 4,000, it's the same more.
Exactly, that's how the which is more or less doesn't matter. But you have several packages, for example, we call it for regular project. Between 25 and 34 foot is the same package for us. More than 40 foot, 50 foot is another package. Less than 60 foot is another one. More than 60 foot is a special case. But for example, for that 25. Usually for
building project as well?
Yes.
Yes, I went through the architectural, structural, mechanical.
Not mechanical. This is a comment. It is a comment. It means that we virtually build the building, never drop any drawing. All you have to do every client, make sure the project is as possible. For example, we say partial, so we provide a theory view of the drawing, so it's very hard for you to do this. And one more thing, usually these days, especially in Toronto, they don't need to work for the area. But in Toronto, the area is done. It's responsible to check the roof truss hanging. And they use a lot of mistake. And that mistake is possible because it's not the roof truss.
They usually make sure because they have their own software, they put whatever they need and figure out all of the numbers and
Check everything online. And this is how we provide, for example, all content for everything. And if you want to change it, you can do it on paper, not on document.
so is this Revit something within a bigger program like AutoCAD or?
It's another generation of AutoCAD. CAD stands for computer aided design.
Yeah,
It means that it's a computer accurate tool for drafting. When you draw a line, you call it this is the wall or this is the video. But in this system, we call it BIM, Building Information Model. We build the house, we never draw anything. We say this is the wall with this wall value, with this thickness, with this finish. And then the computer generate all drawing for us. It means that there is no mistake, no comment, we come in there. So we reduced it by not 100%, but let's say 25%.
Theoretically means that if you want a section that goes like this.
Exactly.
You can do it.
Exactly.
Because you're building the house and then looking at it.
Exactly. And for those packages, we usually charge at the moment. Yeah. Very good.
Thank you very much. All the best.
یه راستش عقبه اوناش احتیاج نیست فقط چون وقتی که خونه که میای توی خونه خب مثلا خیلی کوچیکه دیگه قدیما ولی تو استوریش ولی پشتش دک خیلی بزرگه یعنی این میتونه نه یعنی درختی اصلا جلوش نیست
I always say to them,
از لحاظ درخت مشکل نداره
ولی زونینگ از لحاظ زونینگش
not good for us to go to the zoning department and check, because if I give them a wrong information,
It's a liability, yeah.
so I always would tell them to go for. So what I would do is to work with the individuals. For example, if there is any project like that, if I send you the images and stuff like this, what do you think about this? For example, like.
فقط به بعد وقت بشینیم با هم صحبت کنیم ببینیم
information like how much
Actually, we don't charge for that, you know. Even if we can do it from our own office or zoning, usual thing we do for lots of our friends and lots of our clients, and we're gonna keep that privacy for them, you know. We'll be sure about that. But if it's something like that, you can easily just send me an email, send me the listing, or you just give me the address or the size of the property. I can give you the brief description what they can propose there, and even in terms of committee, is it committee of adjustment applicable or not? And the good one for us in this situation, because it's not charity, it's all about the business. So we want your client to hear from us about that project. Later on, if they want it, I hope that they can come to us. Two paragraph description, what they
company coming saying that from Hyphen says this is clear to us.
بعدش هم با خودش
But if you to look at 7 days,
Yeah, it depends, and it's not too much.